everyone. Wishing you all a very happy new year. With this, we'll start our course Artificial Intelligence All You Need to Know. The course is designed in such a way to a person who doesn't know anything in artificial intelligence to the one who want to excel in it. So, in anything, right? In anything we learn, to understand the basics, where it all originated from, is very important for us. That will give us a very detailed and deep understanding about the topics and the knowledge. So, with respect to artificial intelligence, it's important for us to understand how it exactly originated from, right? And what is the inspiration for it, and how can we solve from a very simple problems to a complex problems in our lives, and how AI is making our life easy. Okay, to start with, AI is not new, right? As we all know, the first term AI, artificial intelligence, was termed in 1956, right? 1956 from John McCarthy. So he's also known as father of artificial intelligence. So if the artificial intelligence was already termed in 1956 itself, why is it all buzz now? Why everyone are behind AI? What is it that it is making AI a superpower which is everywhere in the world, is getting used to solve problems, right? So we'll know from detail of everything and understand more about artificial intelligence. So to start with, what is artificial intelligence, right? Let's go even more base, which is the term intelligence. What is intelligence? As we all know, whenever we hear the term intelligence, we actually tend to relate it to solving complex problems, puzzles, solving very uh, um, uh, ideating the problems. But is it that complex? The intelligence word means a human tendency. I'm talking about human intelligence here. A human tendency to respond to something. There is some input and we process it as humans and we respond to it. For example, let's take an example of an hot water, and you just touched your hot water. As soon as you touch the hot water, you'll just realize how hot it is and it is harmful for your skin. You just take it back as soon as possible, right? Even that is intelligence. When you when you feel thirsty and you want to drink water, right? What do? You open the bottle cap and you drink water. So the input is here, you feeling thirsty. The input is here, you touching the hot water. And there is some processing which is happening within a human mind, which is making us realize that you should take back your hand as soon as you touch very hot, which is harmful for your skin. And as soon as you should drink water because your body needs it, and you drink the water. This intelligence vary from as simple as this to the complex problems which we solve, right? So once we know like why I was stressing about the intelligence is because the term is coined so beautifully, that artificial intelligence, can we create this intelligence like not human intelligence but machines? Can machines think like humans, was the question which arose, which is a beautiful question which has led to lot of research and the discoveries and inventions. So now artificial intelligence, okay, as the term say, that we are creating it something which doesn't exist naturally, is what artificial mean. And when we see our artificial intelligence, we are telling we are creating an artificial intelligence. We are creating an intelligence which is not existing, right? Now when that question arised, that can a human make machines think like human, right? And the answer was yes. Why the answer was yes, right? We understand in deep. So through the like human brain, as I mentioned, takes input, process it, and outwards, the core reason of human intelligence is the human mind, which is brain, right? So now, when we want to achieve artificial intelligence, all the intelligence for the human is coming from the brain. And can we create, or can we do something how the brain works? And lot of researchers and the computer scientists discovered that it is an yes. Once they understood that it is an yes, and once they know how brain exactly works, is when it is easy for us to create that artificial intelligence, right? So now, as I mentioned, it is taking an input, it is processing it, and it is acting or having an output. So now this is what brain is doing, and now machines are also supposed to do this, correct? But when I say brain is doing this, it's very important for us to understand the brain first. How exactly it is doing? What in the brain is doing all this? Which is also a very interesting fact to know about ourselves, correct? Okay, to understand this, let's understand our brain first. The parts of the brain and what in brain is responsible to do all this. Okay, so brain is composed of an estimated 86 billion specialized nerve cells called neurons. So we all know our human body is comprises of billions of cells, but the brain is composed of an 86 billion specialized nerve cells called neurons. And these neurons are interconnected by trillions of junctions called synapses. Let's understand deep. What is a neuron? Right? When I say a neuron, what is a neuron? A neuron is a cell. As we know, our human body is comprised of cell. So neuron is also a cell whose job is to receive the information, it process it, and it pass it on. So this is how the structure of neuron looks like. Neuron has numerous parts to it. The couple of parts which I would like to enlighten here, which is responsible to make a lot of actions in making decisions, right? The parts of neurons are dendrites. There's a cell membrane, there's a cell body, there's an axon, and there's a myelin sheath. And this part is called axon, and again, axon has a lot of myelin sheath and a lot of it. So just to understand on a high level, the parts of neuron is what is depicting in this picture. Now to understand dendrites, so now I mentioned there's an input and there's an processing which happens, and there is a output, right? There's an output. So what are all that is responsible for taking input? Who is a decision maker here, and what is an output? So now dendrites are the ones which receives the signal. So when it comes to human brain, it is a signal. Signal is a physical change. When I say physical change, as I mentioned in my previous example, when you touch a hot water, your skin identified, or your skin is the one which got to know that the water is hot. So basically there is a physical change there, which we term it as a signal, right? And there has to be a signal which will be received by the dendrites. Once the dendrite receives the signal, we have a cell body which is a decision maker. So when I say decision maker, what it does, it checks if the signal is a strong or is it a weak signal. If the signal is strong, what it does is it decides that this signal needs to be passed on to the other nearby neurons. So now axon, what is the duty of axon? Axon is an output which sends the signals to the other neurons. Okay, so now this is the brain structure. There is an input, there is a processing, and there is an output. So now we understood the structure of a neuron, which is responsible for making a lot of decisions at the human brain. In reality, this is the one neuron we spoke about, and when it comes to human brain, as I mentioned, there are 86 billion nerve cells, neurons, which together make all these decisions. Now how this particular neuron transmits or communicate, right? So we understood that it receives the signal, it processes it. If it is strong, it is supposed to pass it to other signal, and how it passes is a connection called synapse. They communicate through a connection, and that connection we call it as synapse. There has to be a strong synapse which will have a strong influence, and there has to be a weak synapse which will have a weak influence. So now what is synapse? Where is it, right? So from one neuron to another neuron, the gap between these place is where the chemical releases, right? And this chemicals are the ones, this portion is called synapse, and here is where it communicates and understands that the signals are supposed to be passed. And when there is a strong influence, it passes through all the neurons and the overall decision is made. Like when we learn something, some connections get stronger, right? So for example, say you are getting prepared for an exam and you read once, you might understand, but you might not remember it. How to make that connection strong, right? So that is done by practicing. You revise. So when it finds a repeated connections is where you tend to remember more, where it keeps into a long-term memory. If you do something, there is something called short-term memory as well, which is temporary or limited for the current task. So this is all about the brain and how learning in brain happens. As I gave an example that repetition and practice strengthens the connection. So it recognizes the patterns. So how learning happens in brain is, this is one of the important thing because this is also used in artificial intelligence. And everything we are learning now will connect it to artificial intelligence in our next chapter. Now we understand how lot about brain so that we'll be able to kind of connect it to our next topics in our artificial intelligence. So how learning in brain happens, right? It recognizes the pattern. So pattern recognition is one thing where it plays important role in learning. And it's strengthening the useful connections and it weakens the unused ones. Say, as I mentioned, if you just read it once and you leave it, does your brain remembers it? Definitely no. So repetition and practice will repeat the signals which strengthen the connection. So now we learn, this is the learning part. Can we undo the learning, or can we realize our mistakes and we'll be able to correct it? This is also a very important term when it comes to AI, because our machines do it and how we do it we'll learn in deep in our next chapters. But now mistakes are essential for human brain. So human brain will try something, it makes an error and the brain adjusts the connections and it try again. Whereas it learns that whatever the error it makes, it shouldn't be made again. So this is also a very important thing. When it comes to brain, everything happens naturally. Whereas when it comes to machine, we define them. And how we define? As I mentioned, synapses. So when there is a strong synapse, strong influence, weak synapse, weak influence. right? So now synapse is a term for our brain, and we want machine also to learn in the same way, right? So for the synapse we assign something called weights, and for learning we adjust the weight, right? So weights is one physical number which you will assign so that machine will be able to make those decisions. And when you understand that machine is making a mistake, you adjust those weights and allow machine to learn from it and then make a decision. So this is all very important aspects in AI as well. So now coming to memory, there is short term memory and long term memory with our brain as well, right? When it comes to memory, we have short term and we have long term. Okay, so I mean, we all know how is short term works, how is long term works. Short term is temporary, which is limited for a current task, whereas long term memory is something we store the patterns. Brain learns the patterns and it creates a strong neural connection which will store in our memory. So if you want to compare that to machine, you can think like a RAM, which is a short term, and the model parameters are long term memory. So what is model parameters and all we learn in our next classes, but on a high level you can just keep these examples, a comparison examples. So basically the core idea is, if intelligence is all about pattern recognition, right, plus learning from experience, right? So, and we are capable of making machines to think like human. But I mean, there is human machines. I mean, humans and machines definitely differ in a lot of the variety of aspects. Right? For example, humans, we can feel emotions, and all the intelligence which is happening in our mean is happening naturally for us. Whereas in machines, we teach them. We are humans help machines to think like humans. So how, what is the input, what are the connections in AI, and how does it learn from mistakes? We talk about real neurons within brain. Is there an artificial neuron? Yes. And how is that? What does that do? Everything we learn in detail in our next chapter. Thank you so much.